The Red Eye Radio podcast is a service of Freightliner and Detroit.
Now it's Red Eye Radio with talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or just starting your day, welcome to the show. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Rick Roberts. This is Red Eye Radio.
And thank you so much. Always a pleasure to be in for the guys when they're away. Want to give you a programming note. Of course, we're taking your calls live. This is a live show. There will be a best of show Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. And then, of course, Gary and Eric will both return live Wednesday night. So I know you're looking forward to that. I know they're looking forward to getting back. And here's the talk line, 866-90-RED-EYE. That's 1-866-907-3339. And no, I have no explanation for that last call. I don't get it. Let's go to your calls. Let's go to Mike. Mike in Reno. Mike, thank you for your patience. I appreciate it. How you doing, Mike?
Great, Rick. Hey, I just got to say, it's really great to hear your voice again. I used to hear you all the time and talk to you a lot when you was on that FM station up here in northern Nevada. Oh,
that's right. Yeah, I did an afternoon show there, sure.
And, man, you made my holidays.
Oh, thank you.
Just hearing your voice again.
Thank you.
Anyways, I just want to say that, these Democrats act like petulant teenagers, you know. You ever have one of those girlfriends that blamed you accused you of cheating on you, and you knew that she knew you wasn't, and it was dead giveaway that she was cheating on you. Everything that they accused Trump of, they're doing.
Well, yeah, that's the Democratic way, Democrat way, and has been for a long time. You know, it's a double-edged sword. There's no two ways about it, and the only reason the articles of impeachment have not been filed with the Senate to be tried is because as soon as they do, it's over. Because they have no case.
Exactly.
They have no impeachable offense. They have no crime. It'll be over. And as long as they can drag this out, the closer they can get to the 2020 election, the better off they think they are. But I got news for them. It's over now.
Oh, yeah. See, the whole deal is they all had all their eggs in the Hillary Clinton basket, and they thought that none of this corruption would ever get out in the open, and Donald Trump threw the biggest stick in their spokes that they could have met, and they don't know how to handle it.
Well,
they just got to.
You're right. The main way he messed them up was with that phone call transcript. They never thought. They never thought in a million years he would release that transcript. I got a hold of it. I read it live on the air on my afternoon drive show. I didn't. There's nothing there.
Yeah, and I'm walking around talking to friends of mine, and they still don't. They still don't believe. They still think that there's something there. I'm going, you got to be kidding me. And I don't know if it's willful ignorance or complete stupidity. These people walking around that ain't paying attention to what's going on. And we're living in the most historic times in history right now.
It's hate. That's what it is. They dislike Trump more than they care for this country.
Yeah, and I mean, these are historic time. I mean, they're going to have 100 years from now, kids in school will be singing Donald Trump songs and like that.
I don't know about that. Let me ask you something, Mike. How old a guy are you?
I'm 62.
Okay, so all the people you talk to that refuse to see the elephant in the room, you have to know it's not because of the evidence. Most of these people, I would assume, can read and write and put one foot in front of the other. It's because their hate for this man transcends their caring for the country. Otherwise, they'd be going, whoa, we got more people working now than we ever had in the history of the country. More black people, more young white people, more Asians, more Hispanics are working than ever before. Historic gains on Wall Street, which affects everyone with a 401k or union dues. I mean, you got to look at this and say, what's not to like?
Exactly. And I mean, I've said for 20 years, we needed a businessman in the White House, and never thought we'd see one. We did, but it's still going to take, if there was Donald Trump's lined up for the next 50 years, it's going to take at least that long to straighten out what Obama did.
Oh, amen to that, brother. Listen, good to hear your voice again. I appreciate the call from Reno, Nevada. Please don't be a stranger to Eric and Gary. I know they'd be happy to hear from you. Let's go to Chris in Macon, Georgia. Chris, thank you for your patience. I appreciate it. How you doing, Chris?
Yeah, thank you for that cooling down period there. I kind of needed that. But
why is that, Chris?
Well, I mean, that one caller, if he thinks that if color is, any more honest, then, the Democratic Party loves him.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and you look at the age of the Democratic Party, they're all, 100 years old. I mean, they've been sucking off the system for 30 years, almost every one of them. You look at how many Republicans have retired in the last couple of years. But most of our Republicans are young. They're young in their career. But, yeah, it's unbelievable.
Well, I'm glad we got you off the ledge. So what's going on?
Well, the other thing that ticks me off about the Republicans is, they sit there and kick the sand when they have proof that Comey and Brennan both lied under oath to Congress, and none of them say a word.
I agree. I
mean,
there's nobody.
All on Fox News.
There's nobody worse at messaging than Republicans.
You see them on Fox News selling their books, complaining about this and complaining about that. But I don't hear one thing about Comey and Brennan lying to Congress under oath.
I think, now, this is what I think, all right? I'm going to give you my opinion. I think the powers that be in the Republican Party have finally figured out that the American people have had enough. I'll give you an example. It was sort of like I was in talk radio during the Monica Lewinsky and all of that nonsense. And, of course, Pelosi comes out and says, well, compare and contrast, Clinton was impeached for being stupid. No, he wasn't. He was impeached for perjury. He was impeached for lying to a grand jury. You don't lose your law license for a year because you're stupid. You lose it because it was obstruction of justice and you were lying under oath. They won't even admit to that. I truly believe the Republicans understand now. Maybe they didn't before. Maybe they didn't care before. I don't know. But I believe they believe now that the American people won't put up with this anymore. If you're going to be a representative, get out there and represent. We don't need any more non-representing representatives or leaderless leaders. If you're not going to do your job, punch out and go home.
Yes, thank you. The other thing is the Bushes. If you look at the Bushes as an example for the Republican Party and John McCain, that's the wrong thing to do, because if you go back and watch YouTube videos of George Bush Sr., he was selling our country out to China, and he preaches how great China was, and China is not our enemy. Just go back and look at those videos, and they sold this country out. The Republicans did.
Well, Barack Obama said the same thing about China. China has changed dramatically, not only the dynamic under which their economy runs, but the people in power. It's changed dramatically in the last 20 years. And I tell you, if you want to get with somebody that gives you spot on information about China, and for that matter, tariffs in general, it's Curtis Ellis. Curtis Ellis, all you have to do is Google him. He's a good friend, been a friend for 20 years. America First is the group, and this guy has forgotten more about China and tariffs and the rest than I've ever known. I mean, check it out. You won't be disappointed. I promise you that. Let's go to Frank in Corsicana. Frank, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Frank?
I'm doing great, Rick. I want you to know, first of all, I thank you that you're always in my prayers. All of you.
Well, thank you.
All of the commentators, God bless you. And thank you for your work you do for our country. I want to start off saying I'm for term limits, annual audits, especially of the Democrats who want to put it on our president and everyone else.
Yeah.
And annual drug testing. And, I remember that Booker T. Washington in the early 19th century, he commentated on having a segment of black population who he was very concerned about, who would be, exploiting the government for what they had to offer, for the freebies and what have you.
Right.
But, that's another thing, because I think most of the Democrats, a lot of them, they won't admit it, but, they're eating at the government trough at the expense of the taxpayer. And a lot of them really, they don't want that out there.
No, they don't.
You know what I mean, Rick?
No, I do. And here's the thing. There will always be, and this is, long after, I've taken the big dirt bath, there will be people trying to turn racism into a cottage industry. Jesse Jackson, biggest poverty pimp I've ever seen. And I've talked to him one-on-one 100 times. Al Sharpton, same thing. Shabazz, same thing. I've had black leadership on one side of the console and the head of the white Aryan resistance on the other side of the console. And at the end of the day, they agreed on everything. You get this, we'll take this. There will always be racism. Unfortunately, you can't shout racism down. You can only educate people out of it, and therein is the problem. If you don't want to be educated, you can't get rid of racism. And these jackbooted, burr-headed, three-tooth thugs, you're not going to get across to them. Thank goodness they are few and far between. But you're absolutely right. This is Rick Roberts on Red Eye Radio.
Winter weather is inconvenient, but during a breakdown, it can turn downright dangerous. Roadside assistance providers like TA Truck Service Road Squad hit the highways to reach stranded drivers as quickly as possible. But how do you keep yourself safe in the meantime? Here are a few things you'll want to make sure you have on your rig before you find yourself in the situation. Make sure you have enough fuel in your tank to keep the heat running when you really need it. Low fuel levels can make starting your engine a challenge, and diesel is a necessity when it comes to staying warm in an emergency situation. Be sure to keep your cell phone battery charged, especially when the weather is bad, in case you need to call for roadside assistance. In the event you do break down, call 1-800-824-SHOP, and Road Squad will be there whenever, wherever you need them.
This maintenance tip is brought to you by TA Truck Service. More bays, more expertise, more solutions.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
All across America, it's Red Eye Radio. Rick Roberts in for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. Glad you're along. They will be back with you live on Wednesday night. Of course, we're doing a live show right now, taking your calls, 866-90-RED-EYE. That's 1-866-907-3339. Let's go to John in Michigan. John, thank you for waiting. I appreciate your patience. How you doing, John?
Hi, Rick. Great show. I have two questions for you.
Sure.
One I'm a little bit concerned about, well, worried or concerned, but the first Republican president, was Lincoln, and they hated him. And the Civil War started because of slavery, and the Southerners covered it up by saying it was mainly states' rights. 150 years or so later, we have another Republican president, and they hate him, and they switched 180 degrees from state rights to big government. And I'm just kind of concerned. What do you think? Do you think they would, if he gets reelected again, do you think they'd go really crazy and riot?
Okay, specifically, if I may ask, who is they specifically?
The Democratic Party.
No, they're not going to get their hands dirty. They never do. All of their illegal acts are done by proxy. All you have to do is go back and look at the history of the party. No, I don't think that's going to happen at all. I think it'll be the Constitution does not limit the number of times you can try to impeach a president. I think what is probably more likely is that if, in fact, and I believe he will, President Trump gets reelected, we will have 4 years of continual investigation and impeachment, which is basically what the Democrat Party is dissolved into. It's done nothing on behalf of its constituents in America. All they've done is investigate and accuse and try to impeach for 3+ years. I think that's what will continue.
Okay, and the second question is the Constitution. I liken it like the Bible. It has everything that you need to know. I know it's not perfect, but these guys thought it out. The forefathers really thought it out. Is there any way, and is there anything that says in there that socialism is illegal?
No. I don't equate the Constitution with the Bible. The Bible is much more important, at least to me personally. The Constitution is a blueprint for a grand human experiment from people that were living under an oppressive government that was not only their government, but also their theology. And if you study the Founding Fathers, which I have, I'm amazed every time I read about these guys, whether it's Jefferson or Franklin. There's so many. It's amazing. It's like they had a crystal ball and they could see into the future. But no, you could make the case under treasonous acts and sedition that if you're trying to change the form of government, but that's a pretty big legal leap. I think what's going to happen, there is no magic pill. The American people are going to have to stand up, be counted, make their voices heard. We're going to have to get term limits so people don't go to Washington and then just stay until they fall over. Campaign finance reform. You shouldn't be elected to anything just because your pockets are deeper than someone else. And at the end of the day, the American people have to realize they still wield the greatest power, at least in this country, which is a free and open ballot.
Okay. Okay, well, that helps out a lot. I know
everybody's trying to figure out a way to make this work quickly. There's nothing quick about this. There's no rubber bracelets. There's no banners to fly. There's nothing sexy about this. It's a lot of hard work trying to inform people that many times don't want to be informed. We've got adults walking around, driving cars, talking on cell phones, procreating, one would assume at night, that don't even know who their senator is, has no idea about elected representation, doesn't know about the different entities of government. They just watch the news once in a while, and if CNN's loud enough, they may get an idea of what's happening. And that's sad. The Founding Fathers never, ever, ever thought that the American people would become so fat, happy, lazy, complacent, apathetic that they wouldn't keep an eye on their government. That's our government. Founding Fathers never thought that. Not for a moment, because they went through so much to give us this. Threats of death, threats of losing their fortunes, threats of losing their family. They never thought that we would just whiz it away because the season premiere of Survivor's on TV. They never thought that would happen. And it's a damn shame that it has. But if you want to know how this is rectified, it's rectified by the American people saying no. Not just no, but hell no. You work for us. We don't work for you. You got very, very spoiled for a long time. We didn't do our jobs. We woke up from our long slumber, wiped our eyes, and said, what the hell's going on? Sorry. Parents are back after a long weekend. Kids, clean up your room. That's what we got to do. I'm Rick Roberts. This is Red Eye Radio.
Phone lines are open. 1-866-907-3339. 866-90-RED-EYE. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Rick Roberts.
And thank you so much. Always a pleasure to be in. All across America, it's Red Eye Radio. And I am Rick Roberts, in for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. They return live Wednesday night, so I'm sure you'll want to catch them live Wednesday night. We're live with you tonight, taking your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE. That's 1-866-907-3339. Let's get right back to the phones. Let's go to Sam in California. Sam, thank you for waiting. I appreciate it. How you doing, Sam?
Hello, Rick. Greeting you from Fallbrook, north of San Diego. I used to listen to you in your old days down here.
That's right.
It's now more like unfortunately, it's more like the People's Republic of California these days, but there's still a lot of good people here.
Yeah, well, Rick, San
I
Diego was the last bastion of conservatism in that entire state, unfortunately.
Yes, and if you haven't been brought up to date on recent events, it looks like San Diego now is going the same way as both Los Angeles and Sacramento and San Francisco.
Man, that's
so the state is pretty much, it's out of the loop. Rick, my point I wanted to make is that I think the three most important words in the history of our republic are "we the people."
Yes.
And I say that because our founding fathers, you and your last guest were quite correct. I think you stole some of my thunder. The founding fathers intended for us to be a self-governing people. And we would elect our own representatives and then be governed according to our wishes and, of course, the principles laid down by the Constitution and Bill of Rights. And I think those ideals have slipped badly in recent times. And I say this because my wish for changes in 2019 would have been that Ruth Bader Ginsburg would have had to step down due to her unfortunate illness this past year. I certainly don't wish a lady anything bad, that she died or anything like that.
Right.
But if she had been, necessary for her to step down, then it would have afforded Trump an opportunity to appoint another conservative judge at the Supreme Court. And the reason I think that is so important is because, as you well know, some people want to make law at the Supreme Court level rather than just legislate according to the law of the land as it is written.
Right.
And I think this can and does at times have a terrible effect, on our country. It can upset the apple cart to a tremendous degree. This wasn't intended by the founding fathers. And again, it makes it seem as if the people are being ruled by a small percentage of people, call them the ruling elite or what have you. There are some people, such as Hillary Clinton, not just her, and not all Democrats either. Some people believe that they are the only ones fit to decide what is right and what is wrong and what course the country should take. That should be according to the will of the people. And if the people decide to stub their toe and go in the wrong direction, then that's our own fault. But it shouldn't be legislated, for heaven's sakes, from the Supreme Court.
No, I think you're right. Let me say this. If I were to look at the U.S. Supreme Court the way it stands right now, and if I could replace anyone on that court at the moment, I would be with you. It would be Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She was appointed by Bill Clinton in 93, if I'm not mistaken, 1993. She's 86 years old. She said some pretty compelling things over her career, not the least of which for women to be equal with men, that women have to be the decision makers, that their choices have to be the controlling choice. I mean, again, she's 86 years old. She went to law school in 1955 or something. Yeah, it's probably time to go. Don't you think? It's too bad, but I mean, we all we all mature and move along. And I think, and again, like you, I don't wish any ill health on anyone. and I hope she gets over this. I think it's a new bout of cancer, if I'm not mistaken. Hope she gets over it sooner rather than later. But, yeah, I would probably replace her first and foremost.
Well, I think that, this idea, again, of people being elected for life is not all that great either.
No.
But the point is, I believe the lady is hanging on simply because Donald Trump was elected president, and she's hoping that she can hang in there until possibly a Democrat is elected in 2020. With the state of her health, I don't know how much longer she can hold on, and I don't wish her to, have anything unfortunate happen to her.
I hope.
It's just that there has to be an end to everything, and
exactly.
She should be stepping aside.
And I think you're right. I think she is. It's just my opinion. I could be dead wrong. But I think she's probably, she has voiced on several occasions very loudly and very clearly her disdain for Trump. And, if she's holding on for that, it's sort of like Pelosi. Again, it's my opinion. She appears that she's got some medical issues. And I would hope that, Luck, you've been around since dirt. Time to go home. Time to pass the torch. And I feel the same way about Ginsburg. I appreciate the call very, very much from Fallbrook. Please don't be a stranger. Let's go to Daryl in Missouri. Daryl, thank you for your patience. I appreciate it. How you doing, Daryl?
Never better, Mr. Roberts. You, sir, are as good as it gets. And I'm enjoying the dialogue this evening.
Well, thank you very much.
A lot of great callers. The one thing I'd like to change in 2019, first in the Just for Fun department, my number 2 choice is I'd like to get about 200 forensic accountants that were part of the 85,000 people who lost their jobs at Arthur Andersen and give them carte blanche to go investigate the entire Mueller investigation and get a little payback on Andrew Weissman and do line by line, penny by penny, every minute, look and see how many guys were double billing. But my number 1 choice, and boy, it's really difficult, but I wish the president would not have signed that budget and would never sign a budget that's not balanced. In my opinion, there's nothing more swampy than spending money, more money than we bring in or more money than we have. And I believe after the first or second budget, he said he wasn't going to do that again. And this would really would have given him something he could point to in 2020. One more thing. No, just like I'd like to give a little bit more attention to the wall, go down there every couple of times a month and get some more progress. And but I'd like to see, the best defense is a good offense. Put these people on their heels and make them work. And instead of them worrying about the impeachment, say, well, can't sign that budget till it balances.
Now, Daryl, in gambling, what they're doing with the budget now is called betting on the come. You're betting, hopefully, that what you need will come in by the time that it's due. And, I'm with you. They talk about government shutdowns as though we're all going to be paralyzed in fear that we can't function. The fact of the matter is, aside from a few national parks, you wouldn't know it. And people talk about, well, what about the military paychecks? What about, okay, first of all, that's not affected. If it is affected, it's affected by 3 weeks, maybe 4. And nobody goes without pay. So, I'm kind of with you. If you don't have it, don't spend it.
I've had an idea that I've had for years that the best way to get these people some perspective is do away with Washington, D.C. We have 50 states. Let these people work 50 weeks a year and make them meet at every state capital across this country. Let them work like Sunday to Thursday. Thursday, their getaway day. Let them stay in regular motels, no first-class travel. And just to make it fun, let them go North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota in the winter, and Arizona, New Mexico, Texas in the summer. And, I've always said when a guy wears a suit that costs more than the average guy takes home in a month, he's not going to have a lot of empathy for your situation.
Exactly. Well, you know what Thomas Jefferson said? He said, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but this is pretty close. Thomas Jefferson said, I wish to not see, keyword not see all state representatives living and working in Washington, but rather in the respective states that elected them under the watchful eyes of the voters, far away from the special interest that would buy and sell them in the public marketplace. I mean, it sounded like he was talking about something he saw yesterday, and I can't argue with that. You know, if you don't know, every state representative that's hanging out in the nation's capital or across the bridge into Alexandria, Virginia, in their gated compounds, there's no reason for them to be there with all the technology we have. You know, it further removes them from the people they say they serve. And every single one of these men and women that are in D.C., every single one, has an office in their home state that is staffed, furnished, and run every single day of the year with your tax dollar. The only difference is they're not there. They're in D.C. Well, I'm kind of with Thomas Jefferson. Get them out of D.C., get them back under the watchful eyes of the voters that elected them in the respective states, make it a little tougher for these these special interest groups to buy and sell them, as Thomas Jefferson said, to buy and sell them in the public marketplace. Great call. Excellent call. Please don't be a stranger. This is Rick Roberts on Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
All across America, it's Red Eye Radio. I'm Rick Roberts, in for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. Programming note, they will be back with you live Wednesday night. Now, the best of Eric and Gary will be Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. Right now, we're live with you, taking your calls, 866-90-RED-EYE. That's 1-866-907-3339. Let's go to Seattle, Washington. Talk with Mike. Mike, thank you for your patience. How you doing?
Thank you. All the enthusiasm over the president's rallies and all this is because we're no longer let down by these wimpy Republicans who have let us down. And now we have a leader. It's kind of like you. You're a player coach like Lenny Wilkins. You know how to get in there and coach us because you have years of experience and you can get in the game and teach us. And see, now with the budget, I agree with that guy. But the president had to sign that budget for the military. Why? Because there's bullies out there like North Korea and people that are threatening us. And you know, the Democrats, the Chuck Schumer is the most threatening person. The tone in Nancy Pelosi's voice, we're not going to be bullied around. The Democrats are big time bullies, and we're not putting up with it. And we're sick and tired of it. And here's the litmus test. Anybody that would hurt a little tiny baby is a loser. Big time loser, and the president's going to win big time because of that issue alone.
I think you're right, Mike. You know, I've never been in 26 years in radio and television. You know, abortion has never been my forte. I didn't look to jump into that topic until the Democrats pushed it too far. You know, it's not a women's health issue. You know, please stop trying to play word games and wordsmith. I am one. No, it's not a women's health issue. Full-term abortion means you're due tomorrow. Come on in. You can deliver the baby. We'll set it aside and make it comfortable, their words, and you can go down and get a cup of coffee, decide what you want to do. By anyone's measure, that's got to be called murder, not abortion. And I think you're probably right. Democrats aren't, and I'm talking about the Democrats you work with, live next door to, they're not a bunch of cold-hearted, seething, sinister evildoers. I don't think they're going to go for this. No country has ever been able to survive without establishing and maintaining borders. You got to know who you're letting in. The people that live here are deserving of that. They deserve to know who's coming in. Well, I could go on, but I think you're absolutely right. And speaking of dealing with evil, about this time yesterday, we were talking about it. Another church shooting in Texas Well, the Texas Attorney General, which happens to be a friend of mine, I know him well, he's on my show quite a bit, he made a statement that a lot of people are saying, oh, no. Even Bloomberg, no, the only people that should have guns are cops. I disagree. And Attorney General Ken Paxton, he disagrees as well. Common sense is common sense. When evil runs amok, innocent people die. The quickest way to stop that is to put down evil. The church shooting in Texas, we'll talk about it next. I'm Rick Roberts. This is Red Eye Radio, taking your calls 866-90-RED-EYE. That's 1-866-907-3339. It is amazing to me. People go out of their way to become their own worst enemies. I've never, ever seen anything like it. Here's the message. If you're evil incarnate and you walk into a church, be prepared to lose your life.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now it's Red Eye Radio with talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or just starting your day, welcome to the show. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Rick Roberts. From the Pilot Flying J Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
And thank you so much for being along. Of course, by now, you have heard that Texas had another church shooting. The last one we had, 26 people, including kids, were killed because nobody fought back. Well, Texas passed a law, and this time they did fight back. A deacon and one of the church members were killed, and they took out the shooter. Dan Patrick is a great guy, Texas Attorney General. And he pretty much puts it in perspective, I think, in the sense that, yes, we've got a law, and they believe that law should be a national model.
There were three heroes here. Richard White was pulling his pistol, attempting to take down the killer, whose name we won't mention. And Tony Wallace was standing there, didn't have a chance to defend himself at all. And then Jack Wilson that you saw. And for people who know firearms, it's one thing to go to the shooting range, Jason, as many of us do in Texas and other places in America, and be able to fire a shot at 10 or 15 yards on target. It's another thing when someone's pointing a shotgun at you and the adrenaline is flowing. And he took that in 6 seconds, it was over. You see, there are a lot of people in this country, led by the Democrats and the radical left and Joe Biden, who highly criticized our law when we passed it to allow members to conceal carry in church, to allow churches to have their own security force. We passed those two bills in the last 2 years in Texas.
And I think it was a good thing. And not only a good thing, a lot of people think it needs to be the national model. Donald Trump tweeted out, "Our prayers are with the families of the victims and the congregation of yesterday's church attack." It was over in 6 seconds, and he's correct. Think about that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2 people are dead. And now the shooter is dead. Thanks to the brave parishioners who acted to protect 242 fellow worshipers, lives were saved by those heroes, and Texas laws allowing them to carry arms. Who would not think this was a good idea? And again, our thoughts and prayers are with the surviving family. But let's be honest. We know it's going to happen again, right? Why shouldn't your church? I don't know where you live. I don't know what church you go to, but I would think most of you would say, no, I think if you are licensed to carry a firearm, you should be able to carry it in church where you worship. God forbid anything from my mouth to his ear would happen, but we have seen it too many times. Like I said, in the last shooting in Sutherland Springs, Texas, small town, 26 people were killed before this guy was shot. The one that occurred yesterday when I was on the air, two were killed, and they were killed trying to stop the guy. I believe, like Dan Patrick in the state of Texas, you should have a fighting chance. You should not be left to be a victim. And I know a church is supposed to be a sacred place. It is to me. I believe in God, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. I'm no poster boy for Christianity, but I know where the rails are if I jump them from time to time, and I do. But even in church, you should be able to defend yourself. You know, when it comes to Joe Biden, I'm not even exactly sure if he knows what's going on. Did you hear what Joe Biden said about this law? I mean, it was crazy.
It is irrational, with all due respect to the governor of Texas, irrational what they're doing. We're talking about loosening access to have guns, be able to take them into places of worship, store them in school. I mean, it's just absolutely irrational.
Well, it's not irrational. It's common sense unless everybody is going to be escorted by law enforcement everywhere they go. Governor Abbott is a great guy. I've worked with him several times. We were just talking about it, a Facebook live thing together. He's a good guy. He's a common sense guy. But I think Dan Patrick put it best when he said, hey, you know, the ideas that are being espoused by Joe Biden are just flat dangerous.
Joe Biden is dangerous. He's not just an idiotic person who says impossible, absurd things, and he's not just naive, but he's dangerous. Americans who have to understand, whether you believe in owning a gun or not owning a gun, that the Democrats are dangerous. If they get elected to the White House, they will pass executive orders to take your guns, take your ability to protect yourself, your family, your property, and your friends, as those men did yesterday. It's idiotic to say to the American public that we want to take your guns and that's going to make people be better. There's evil in this world, Jason. There's darkness and there's light, and we all know it. And that was evil yesterday. And first responders, God bless them, they were there within a minute. But this was over in 6 seconds. And if Jack Wilson had not taken down that killer, there could have been 10 or 15 people killed before the police got there.
Oh, no,
it's the immediate response. It's the citizens' response that's the most important to stop these shooters.
And what did I say yesterday? You know, our law enforcement does its dead level best in response times. I come from a big law enforcement family, raised by my grandfather, a high sheriff. My cousins were Rampart in L.A., retired back to the ranches in Oklahoma. My son-in-law is a sergeant, K-9 officer, great father to my grandkids, excellent husband to my daughter. But at the end of the day, when something like this happens, you are your own first responder. You're your own first responder. You know, this church was prepared because they passed a law allowing people to defend themselves. Let's go to Rebecca in New York City. Rebecca, thank you so much for waiting. How you doing, Rebecca?
I'm going to say thank God Almighty. Bet you nobody has ever called you from inside a kitty house. I'm up all night because I have kitty houses, so I listen to Red Eye. First, I want to tell you something, Rick. You are an American treasure, period. Then I want to say, we don't have 10 commandments. The tablets contain 10. The Torah, the Old Testament, contains 613. One of them says, I'm translating from the Hebrew, who comes towards you to kill you, rise up. The language is Hashkem, which means rise up and kill him.
No, I've actually
what I said?
You know, I've actually heard that before. My best friend in San Diego is Jewish. Yeah,
I love that.
You
said something again the other day. You were saying, I'm sorry for interrupting you, sweetie. You said that the commandment doesn't say thou shalt not kill. The commandment actually says thou shalt not murder.
Correct.
Killing in defense, and it doesn't say except for this or that, period. You are required to defend a life, period. Yes, you're right. I agree with, I haven't found anything you've said with which I can disagree. Rick, I'm telling you, I'm just sorry. By the way, I found out that my neighbor, I didn't even know she stays up nights. Yesterday she was telling me, Rick Roberts. I said, yeah, I know. We think you're wonderful. I bet you that there are millions of women, okay, maybe not millions, maybe just billions of women who think you're wonderful.
Well, thank you for such kind words. And thank your neighbor as well. We appreciate the listenership more than I can tell you. And yeah, I have that argument with people a lot of times. They say, Rick, you say you're a Christian. Well, I think I am. I do my best. Well, you are for this, and the Ten Commandments say, thou shalt not kill. Well, if you go back to the original Hebrew text, it says, thou shalt not murder. Killing and murdering are two completely different things. And yes, I'm glad the state of Texas has this law. I believe you are obligated to protect the innocent. And if that means taking them out before, I mean, think about it. Sutherland Springs, Texas, 26 people with their heads bowed, worshiping their God, were cut down, killed, including children. And you're going to tell me, like Bloomberg did, no, I don't believe that's right. I think only the police should have weapons. Well, are you going to hire enough police so they can sit with every family in New York? That's just insane. I'm Rick Roberts on Red Eye Radio.
USDA has approved the first set of plants submitted by states and Indian tribes for production of hemp under the U.S. Domestic Hemp Production Program. The approved plants are for the states of Louisiana, New Jersey, and Ohio, as well as the Flandreau Santee Sioux, the Santa Rosa Cahuilla, and the La Jolla Band of Louisiano Indian tribes. Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue announced the new rules in October.
Our program requires all hemp growers to be licensed and includes testing protocols to ensure that hemp grown under this program is hemp and nothing else. USDA has also worked to provide licensed growers access to loans and risk management products.
Meanwhile, the public comment period for the interim final rule has been extended to January 29, 2020.
The rule becomes effective immediately upon publication in the Federal Register, but we still want to hear from you to help us make sure the regulations meet your needs.
This is Stephanie Ho for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
The USDA report is brought to you by Cenex Roadmaster XL Premium Highway Diesel Fuel.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
All across America, it's Red Eye Radio. I'm Rick Roberts, in for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. Thank you so much for being along. Well, I'm not going to give the shooter any credit by mentioning his name. I'm just not going to do that. I will, however, tell you, this guy was evidently wearing a disguise, including a fake beard, a wig, when he stood up from a pew during communion. Pulled a shotgun from underneath his clothing and opened fire inside a North Texas church. He did, in fact, kill 64-year-old Anton Wallace. He was a church deacon from Fort Worth, and 67-year-old Richard White of River Oaks. Texas's own Attorney General said, and I quote, "I hope other states and churches enact the concealed carry policies that we had here." Now, we didn't always have this. Why? Well, we changed it after a Sutherland Springs, which is another very small town here in Texas. 26 people were killed by this shooter. And here in Texas, we said, okay, that's enough. If you are licensed, if you can carry a concealed weapon, you can take it to church. A lot of people have asked, well, Rick, how did this law even come about? Well, I think the best way to listen and figure that out is listen to Dan Patrick.
After the Sutherland shooting at that church several years ago, I asked the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, if indeed the law allowed us to conceal carry as it was written. And he gave an opinion back to us in the Senate and said, yes, if the church allows it. Now, the church, like any other private institution or private business, could post a sign and say you can't. I have not found a church yet who's posted that sign. There may be somewhere. But they know that their men and their women in there are going to be well-trained, their own security volunteer team. Some are off-duty police officers and sheriff's deputies, and they're going to protect their congregation, and they're going to protect the pastors. Look, you, Jason, people who don't know pastors personally don't know how many threats they get. Don't know how many threats they get. This pastor had been threatened. I talked to him last night. Pastor Farmer had been threatened by this guy before. And so he came in a disguise. They were watching him. But, you can't pull your gun first. You have to react. And he pulled his shotgun out from under his coat, and Jack Wilson reacted, as did Richard White. Listen. Richard White was killed. Jack Wilson took him down. So that's the law we changed, that you can carry if a church allows it.
Well, the question is, I don't know where you live, what state you're in listening to me this morning. Would you be in favor of your church doing exactly what the churches in Texas have done, saying, yes, if you are licensed to conceal carry, you can bring your firearm to church? Let's go to JB. JB, thank you for waiting. I appreciate your patience. How you doing?
Hey, Rick, God bless you, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you, sir.
I'm just a simple vet. We live about 14 miles from where the shooting happened in Texas, and all I keep hearing is separation of church and state. Yeah. How about a little more separation of state and church? Just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that.
My thoughts are this.
Go ahead.
You take your family to church. You go there to worship your God as you see fit. We live in a very tumultuous time. There is, and I believe this because I believe in God, there is real evil that is manifest on this earth. And we have seen it time and time and time again. If, I carry with me everywhere. I love what I do for a living, both radio and television. I just don't want to die for it. And just because somebody listens, doesn't like what I say, and, wants to, take me out in the parking lot, I'm not up for that. But I'm not up for sitting there worshiping my God and having some nut job walk in and start cleaning house with a Magnum. If you're licensed to carry, why shouldn't you be able to carry in church?
Well, Rick, I'll tell you, for the last, it's been 10 years or better, we've had stationed armed parishioners in our church.
Right.
We didn't need a law to do it. Our pastor and God, I'll tell you this, our pastor said one time, he said, God gave man free will, but he also gave us the tool to take that free will away from you when you tried to hurt me or other people.
Right.
And I'm sorry, I don't want that to sound blunt, but...
No, sometimes, the message, I think, really needs to be clear. It seems as though these shooters, these random shooters, where do they go? Do they go to gun ranges where people are armed? No. Did they go to police departments? No. They go to schools. They go to churches. They go to places where they're hoping that nobody shoots back. Well, the message should be, if you're going to walk into God's house and try to demonstrate and manifest some type of tangible evil, you're going to be met with a response. That's the only thing that makes sense. For the life of me, I don't understand how politicians don't get this. And, I shouldn't have to go through a politician to protect my family in the first place. This is what Joe Biden said.
It is irrational, with all due respect to the governor of Texas, irrational what they're doing. We're talking about loosening access to have guns, be able to take them into places of worship, store them in school. It's just absolutely irrational.
Okay, well, first of all, you don't know Governor Abbott. I do very well. He is probably one of the most rational men I have ever met. He cares about this state. He cares even more about the people that live within her borders. And for, Joe Biden to make that statement just shows me how woefully out of touch he really is. I shouldn't have to ask Joe Biden if I can defend my family in church. It's sad we're even having this discussion, but we are, because it's a reality. It's happened before, and unfortunately, if history is any indicator, it's going to happen again. And as Dan Patrick said, he hopes that the Texas law becomes a national model. I do too. Well, Rick, you don't live in Minnesota or New York or California. Why do you care? Because the message needs to be sent loud and clear. You will be met with a response. This is Rick Roberts on Red Eye Radio. Now your national forecast.
The snow flurries have been flying for the northern tier states of portions of eastern North Dakota and South Dakota, but primarily Wisconsin, Minnesota, portions of eastern Iowa, northern Indiana, and Illinois, and into Michigan. Now, that's where the bulk of the snow flurries will be today. Chicago set to pick up anywhere from a dusting to 2 inches, more like 5+ for Minneapolis. Then as we move to the north and east, there's an area of rain. Then out ahead of that frontal boundary, freezing rain for places like upstate New York and into the northeast. Now, that'll continue throughout the day today as those cold temperatures accompany this frontal boundary. More snow for the Pacific Northwest begins as rain today on the coast, and then as it crosses the Rockies, we'll see snow for Idaho and Montana. Most of the rest of the nation under clear skies and unseasonably warm temperatures. Your national forecast from Red Eye Radio, I'm meteorologist John Trout.
Phone lines are open. 1-866-907-3339. 866-90-RED-EYE. Now for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Rick Roberts.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure. And this will be my last night with you. Gary and Eric will be back live on Wednesday. And if you want to track me down, just WBAP.com, keyword Rick. All right? You'll find me there. All right. Another Texas shooting, but thank God, literally, we didn't lose as many people. In Sutherland Springs, about a year and a half ago, guy walks into a church. People are praying, heads bowed. He kills 26 people. Very small town. This was a small town as well, white settlement. Before you get it crazy, has nothing to do with blacks. It has to do with Indians back in the day. But 2 people were killed, a deacon and one of the church members. They pulled their weapons, went after the guy, and probably saved 242 people, fellow church members there. It's because of a law that we passed in the state of Texas, and Dan Patrick, the AG, says he hopes it becomes the law of the land, that other states take notice and do the same thing.
It cannot be overstated how important it is that everyone recognize what took place here today. The citizens who were inside that church undoubtedly saved 242 other parishioners. And that might get swept aside in this whole conversation about active shooter response, and God knows law enforcement has done a whole bunch of work to make our response better. We needed to do that, but we're starting to find out that, as the Lieutenant Governor mentioned, over half of these are over before we get there. And I want to commend the chief and his department. Their response was, I mean, it's never going to get faster than that. It was miraculous. And so the true heroes in this are the people who were sitting in those pews today and responded, the immediate responders that saved their fellow citizens. And I just can't overstate how critical that is for everyone to recognize. It is truly heroic, and the citizens of this community have a lot to be proud of for their response.
And I agree. That's Jeff Williams, Regional Director, Texas Department of Public Safety, sound courtesy of Fox. Before I get to your calls, and I'm going to get to your calls in just a second, 1-866-90-RED-EYE. That's 866-907-3339. I want you to hear from Brett Farmer. Now, Brett Farmer is the senior minister of West Freeway Church of Christ. So obviously, this was very impactful to him. You can only imagine, right?
First off, I want to say that I am extremely thankful to Lieutenant Governor and the Governor, Governor Patrick and Governor Abbott, and their rapid response to this. To the law enforcement agencies that have been here, we couldn't have asked for more professional, seamless interviews and work with our congregation and our people, and the kindness that was shown to them by law enforcement. We lost 2 great men today, but it could have been a lot worse. And I'm thankful that our government has allowed us the opportunity to protect ourselves. We have a congregation here of open-hearted people. We help people. We're here to help people. And to have something like this happen destroys my heart. And when I say destroys it because there is evil in this world. Today is one sermon I'll never preach. It'll go away. It was called Leaving a Legacy. And 2 men today left a legacy. But a congregation is going to build on that legacy. We'll have a church-wide meeting tomorrow night because we did not get to have our service this morning. We will be meeting in our building at 6 p.m. Those that want to be here at 8 o'clock, I'm going to make a blanket statement for you, the media, and for the public. And right now I'd like to say to all those that are watching, thank you for your prayers. Please continue to pray for the West Freeway Church family. We like to say we're a place you and your family can call home. And today our home was invaded by evil. The sad thing is it happens all the time as far as evil's concerned. But I know 2 men right now that are better off than any of us are. And I hope and I pray that not only will we survive this, I know we will, but that in some way we might be a beacon to those who don't know what to do. Because today we proved that not only can we be God-loving, God-fearing people, but we can protect each other as well.
And I think that's the overriding message. That's the overriding message. You can love God. You can worship God. You can be God-fearing people, but there's nothing in the Bible that I'm aware of. There's nothing in the Scriptures that I'm aware of. There's nothing that has come down from Jesus Christ or the Holy Spirit or God Almighty that says you can't protect yourself and defend one another. Let's go to the calls. Let's go to Dean in Springfield, Missouri. Dean, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Dean?
Oh, pretty good. I've been on staff, I think 6 churches since 1984, California, Indiana, Missouri, and at least since the mid-'80s, we've always been armed. The congregation doesn't know that. A lot of these people out there that are concerned that there's firearms in their church have been sitting 3 pews down from a Glock for 25 years. They don't know it. The level of threats that pastors get, the level of threats that churches get, I mean, if people only knew, preachers' kids being bullied at school, the bomb threats, the calls, the harassments in restaurants, the last 10 years has been extraordinary. The amount of opposition that Christians, at least, people in the ministry and people that work in churches and daycares and Christian schools is extraordinary. It's nothing like when I first entered the ministry years ago.
I believe that. I absolutely believe that. Let me ask you something, though. Don't you think, and unfortunately, because the landscape has changed as far as what we're seeing in schools and churches and other places, don't you think it's time for the bad guys to know a church is not an easy target? Once you walk through those church doors, you may be met with a deadly response. Don't you think it's time for them to know that?
Absolutely. I taught Christian high school for 5 years, and we were armed. It wasn't advertised because it was California. But if something happened, they would definitely been met with deadly force. And I teach public school now, and even in pretty leftist public schools, about a third of the teachers understand the threat level. And even people that aren't comfortable with guns themselves, teachers that would be squeamish holding a gun themselves, don't have a problem generally with a trained teacher down the hall that had a firearm. because they're kind of in a tough position because they care. Teachers care about their students. Pastors, love their congregations and would die for them. and teachers are really, even public school teachers are really the same way. And I think it's easier in the church community. Jesus said, if you don't have a sword, sell your coat and buy one.
Right.
We're not supposed to be doormat. But our society, definitely in the last 10 years, our society has gotten tremendously more violent towards soft targets like churches and schools.
Well, listen, first of all, let me publicly thank you for the work you do and the work you have done. And I'm in agreement. It's a totally different societal landscape we find ourselves in than we did even a decade ago or 20 years ago. And the message needs to be sent loud and clear. If you intend on coming into this church or school or wherever, but we're talking about churches because that's where the shooting took place, please be advised, you will be met with resistance, deadly resistance. That message needs to go out far and wide. Let's go to Adam in, not exactly sure where Adam is calling from. Adam, thank you for waiting.
Oh, hello. Good morning. I'm calling from Boise, Idaho.
Oh, good to have you.
I wanted to talk about these gun-free zones and the ability to carry a weapon. I moved from Baltimore, Maryland back in '97, which was a very violent place. A bunch of illegal shootings took place, and I moved to Idaho. And here in Idaho, I was able to get a concealed weapons permit. Many people conceal carry here, and I noticed that the violent crime rate here in Boise is so far down compared to what it is in the liberal cities where guns are restricted. And I just think it's common sense to have, honest armed citizens walking around packing guns.
Including in churches.
Including in churches, especially in churches and schools.
Listen,
I think if you're licensed...
I agree with you 100%, because those areas, to the bad guys, to the people that are off center, whether, at the end of the day, whether it's a mental illness or just pure unadulterated evil, it really makes no difference. The outcome's the same. Those places, schools, churches, those places are viewed as soft targets. And I think at least in the state of Texas with these new laws, we're saying, no, don't assume that, because assuming that will probably get you killed by a church member, and rightfully so. Good call. I appreciate it greatly. I'm Rick Roberts. This is Red Eye Radio.
Freightliner Team Run Smart Pro Henry Albert has achieved some very impressive fuel mileage numbers. Henry shares the specs on his truck and his trailer, starting with what's under the hood.
I'm in a 2018 Cascadia Aero X. It's powered by the integrated drivetrain Detroit Series 60 DD15, 400 horsepower, 1,750 foot-pounds of torque at 975 RPM, and that's fed into the Detroit DT12 direct drive transmission with a final axle ratio of 2.16 with active lube management, riding on Michelin X1 tires, owning a fully aerodynamic trailer. The trailer is equipped with a nose cone. It's also equipped with full-length skirts from Fleet Engineers to go completely over the landing gear, completely over the trailer tandem, all the way to the rear bumper. The rain gutter's been plated over, and it's running a Stemco trailer tail. My main run, which is from Charlotte to Laredo, and I'm usually 60 to 65,000 pounds, I was averaging over 10 miles to the gallon. It was up to 10.1.
To learn more about Henry's fuel mileage achievements, go to teamrunsmart.com. This report is a service of Shell Rotella.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Rick Roberts in for Eric and Gary. I want you to hear from Jack Wilson. He is one of the church members. It was his shot that took out the shooter. And I think it's important. He was outside last night The TV crews caught him as he was walking outside, so the audio's a little different here. Jack Wilson.
I don't consider myself a hero at all. Did what I was trained to do and what I was, that was the whole purpose of what went down. As I stated on my Facebook page, gives you full detail of what went down. When the individual came into the building, we were aware that there was some concerns for him. We were already watching him. We had cameras turned on him. Plus, Richard White was, one of the members of the security team was right behind him to his right about 4 feet. I was standing to Richard's right about another 6 feet when the individual got up, produced a shotgun, shot Richard, because Richard and I were both drawing our weapons at the same time, which is shown on the live stream. Then he shot Richard, then shot, Tony Wallace. And at that point, I didn't have a clear shot because people were standing up. I finally got, about a second later, had a clear shot, and I took the shot. The shooter went down, went over to cover, and pulled the shotgun away from his body. And then, other people that are armed in the church that are part of the security team, came forward, to help, in case he did try to get up, which he did not.
Sir, how did you know that he was potentially...
He had on a fake beard and a fake wig with a toboggan on his head and wearing a long coat. From where I was standing, I could see his right hand at all times, pretty much at all times. Could not see his left hand. And apparently, with the shotgun he had, which was a 18-inch, short barrel, 12 gauge, with a pistol grip on it, which is a legal firearm, he had it evidently in his pocket. I don't know this for fact. Evidently in his pocket and underneath his armpit, underneath the long coat.
Well, that's going to do it for me. Listen, I want to thank Eric and Gary for letting me take care of their audience for a few days. My thanks to Alan and Brian. Great job. Thank you so much, guys. And most of all, thank you.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.